Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 28-year personal injury lawyer. And this is the podcast where we talk about all things personal injury law related. And today I'm recording this on the first day of spring. And with spring and warmer weather comes more people out and about on foot or on bicycle, scooters, whatever it may be. And there is bad news out in Missouri for pedestrians. There is some good news, but there's bad news when it comes to pedestrians, and that is pedestrian fatalities are rising in Missouri. So today we're going to talk about pedestrians, pedestrian safety, some of the numbers and what's being done to try and address the rise in pedestrian injuries and fatalities. Here we go. So the good news is that motorist fatalities are down. As of 2024, motorist fatalities were down 4% from the year before, and we're down 10% from 2022. But pedestrian deaths are actually rising. And in 2024, in Missouri, there were 150 pedestrians killed, which was a 16% increase from 2023. And again, obviously, this matters to everybody. It matters to drivers because they're the ones that are encountering people walking, bicycling, those types of things on the roadways. It matters to the people that are actually participating on foot or bicycle. And it matters to our lawmakers who and other government officials who are in charge of trying to keep pedestrians, all users of the roadways, safe. So this Missouri Department of Transportation's latest road safety report, it just highlights the fact that something is going on, and right, whether it's, are there more people on the roads by, again, on foot or bicycle or whatever? Are there bad designs? Are there not enough safe ways for pedestrians to cross busy roadways, things of that nature? But a couple of the common factors in these pedestrian fatalities had to do with people exiting their cars due to breakdowns. So maybe they're on the side of the roadway. And then also a lack of pedestrian infrastructure. In the Kansas City area, this report noted specific high-risk areas along Prospect Avenue, Troost Avenue, Highway 40, and I-435. Now, in a recent article and story on KSHB 41, some of the people that were interviewed for that story, like drivers, they expressed concerns about crosswalk availability for pedestrians. And then there were other drivers who had off-camera concerns about the elimination of the Ride KC bus routes and its potential impact on pedestrian safety. Obviously, less public transportation available for people to move around the city is putting more people on the roadways by foot, increasing the odds that there's going to be accidents involving injury or potentially death. So why are Missouri roads dangerous? If you do an analysis of the infrastructure in Missouri, especially in the larger cities of Missouri, there is generally a finding that there are a lack of sidewalks and crosswalks, and there's poor signage and lighting at those areas. And finally, there's road design issues that encourage higher traffic speeds. Michael Kelly, who is a person involved with Bike Walk KC, he talks about Missouri roads being dangerous by design. And basically, when he talks about that, he's referring to roadways that are engineered in ways that inherently increase the risk of accidents, particularly for vulnerable users like pedestrians and cyclists. These designs often prioritize vehicle speed and traffic flow over safety for all users. And the key characteristics of these roadways that are dangerous by design involve multiple wide lanes, which encourage higher vehicle speeds and reducing the reaction time for drivers. Again, the lack of pedestrian infrastructure, an absence of sidewalks, crosswalks, pedestrian signals, the absence of all those things that force individuals to navigate unsafe conditions, and then insufficient signage and lighting, which leads to poor visibility, lack of warnings about pedestrians' presence, and all these things increase collision risk. Now, again, Mr. Kelly, who's the policy director for Bike Walk KC, he's emphasized that such roadways are dangerous by design because they lack the essential safety features, making them hazardous for non-motorized users. There's also a case study on Highway 40 in particular, which is in Independence, Missouri. And this case study just exemplified the dangerous by design concept. The notable issues from that study included sidewalk limitations. Sidewalks are present only on one side of the highway, compelling pedestrians to walk along the roadway or cross multiple lanes of traffic unsafely. There's an absence of crosswalks. The lack of designated crossing points forces pedestrians to cross at unmarked and unsafe locations, increasing the likelihood of accidents. Inadequate signage, which limited signage fails to alert drivers to pedestrian activity, reducing driver awareness and increasing collision risk. And then finally, higher speed traffic. The design encourages high vehicle speeds, which combined with the other factors I just talked about, elevates the danger for pedestrians. These design flaws have contributed to several pedestrian fatalities and injuries along Highway 40. For instance, in 2024, there was a fatal pedestrian crash that occurred at the intersection of US Highway 40 and Chrysler Avenue in Independence. And additionally, just less than 2 miles from that site, a person was critically injured in January of this year while attempting to cross Highway 40 near 36th Terrace. Advocates like Michael Kelly propose implementing road diets, which is an interesting term, right? But basically road diets to enhance the safety on highways like 40 in Independence. This approach involves reducing the number of vehicle lanes to allocate space for bike lanes, wider sidewalks, and other traffic calming measures. Such modifications can encourage drivers to maintain more reasonable speeds and provide safer environments for pedestrians and cyclists. So talking a little more about these road diets, as they're referred to commonly, we're talking about, again, reducing the amount of lanes for vehicles and adding bike lanes, sidewalks, plenty of crosswalks, those types of things. And essentially, a road diet is a street design strategy aimed at improving the safety for all road users, pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers by reducing the number of vehicle lanes, repurposing that space for other uses. Now, just to kind of give you a breakdown of what road diets are, their benefits, and where they've been successfully implemented, let's take a look at a few things. Again, a road diet typically involves reducing the number of lanes on a roadway, oftentimes from going from 4 lanes down to 3 lanes by converting 1 lane into a center turn lane to reduce rear end collisions, using the reclaimed space then to make a dedicated bike lane, wider sidewalks, or even pedestrian refuge islands where they don't have to make a crossing all at one time. There's a middle ground for them to assess the current traffic flow and then proceed onward across the street. Again, these road diets also implement traffic calming measures to slow vehicle speeds, which inevitably makes streets safer. So why exactly do these work? Why are they effective? Because again, studies show that lowering vehicle speed significantly reduces the likelihood of fatal crashes, particularly for pedestrians. A pedestrian hit by a car at 40 miles per hour has an 80% chance of dying compared to just 10% at 20 miles per hour. With these changes in place, there are fewer collisions overall. With fewer lanes, there's less lane changing, there's reduced conflict points, and there's fewer crashes, especially those involving left turns. Now, when you reduce the width of roads, that means pedestrians have shorter distances to cross, making them more visible and reducing their exposure to fast moving cars. When you add bike lanes in the roadway structure and you add wider sidewalks, this makes roads more accessible for cyclists and pedestrians, which promotes a healthier and more sustainable transportation situation overall for members in our community. The potential economic benefits of creating these road diets involves streets designed for walkability and biking, which often boost local businesses by increasing foot traffic. All the major cities have undertaken the road diet effort. New York City, the city has used road diets extensively to improve pedestrian safety, particularly in their busy corridors like Queens Boulevard, 9th Avenue, and Manhattan. Seattle, Washington, the city has converted multiple 4-lane roadways into 3-lane configurations, significantly reducing crashes and increasing pedestrian and cyclist activity. In Los Angeles, road diets have been used to transform high crash corridors into safer multi-use streets. And right here in Kansas City and Independence, local leaders and advocates like Bike Walk KC are pushing for road diets on Highway 40 and other high-risk areas. North Kansas City has implemented road diet structure on their main thoroughfare through town. Now, are these road diets always met with optimism and positive feedback? Absolutely not. Drivers often oppose road diets. They fear increased congestion. But according to the data that's out there, it shows that road diets often improve traffic flow by reducing sudden stops and erratic lane changes. There's also a cost, right? Of course, whenever you're undertaking to restructure roadways, a pretty significant cost goes with that. And while road diets are often cheaper than major infrastructure projects, they still require funding for lane restriping, signage, and sidewalk bike lane construction. And finally, just the public's perception is that it's important that we, as the public, understand the benefits of these road diets. Usually, when these are introduced, residents are initially resistant to the concept of reducing the traffic flow, but as they're implemented later on, they take note of the safety improvements that have been gained by these redesigns of the roadways. So, how could road diets help in Missouri? Again, like streets here in the Kansas City area, Highway 40, by adding those crosswalks, sidewalks, and narrowing the lanes, that has been proven to reduce pedestrian fatalities. And slower traffic speeds on streets like Prospect and Troost Avenue could decrease these deadly pedestrian crashes that have been occurring. And finally, incorporating bike lanes and pedestrian zones would encourage safer, more active communities, which again, not only is a great thing for the safety of those out there on the roadways, but also there's a health benefit that comes along with more people not using cars and being out on foot, being out on bicycles, or again, it might be a scooter or something like that. Kansas City currently has a Vision Zero initiative where they are striving to eliminate traffic fatalities by 2030. And that is currently in place and currently an effort being led by the city of Kansas City. Independent city officials are also efforting to study and implement road diets as I record this. Again, it's interesting to note that with the reduction in public transportation routes, bus routes, does that in fact increase or make pedestrian safety worse? And again, it seems logical that if more people are not able to utilize that public transportation and they do have to go on foot, you have just simply more interaction between pedestrians and motor vehicles. But again, maybe that can be offset by the implementation of better road design, better infrastructure, specifically geared towards making pedestrian cyclists safe when they're out there. So again, right now, the statistics are not good because pedestrian fatalities are on the rise right here in Missouri. And so obviously something is not going well. And again, is that a matter of, are there more people out on the roadways? And again, is that because of the loss of bus routes or otherwise? Weather, maybe we've experienced more warm weather over the last few years and more people are simply out on the roadways. But if that's the situation, then do city leaders and other policymakers need to factor in that fact that there are more people out on foot and bicycles, and then work to make those streets and roadways safer? So I would encourage you, if you're listening to this podcast, to pay attention to what the efforts are and educate yourself and see for yourself, does it make sense to implement these road designs to provide for safer alternatives for pedestrians, bicyclists, and others that are using the roadways outside of a motor vehicle? Again, also as drivers, whenever we are in a car, we have to be attentive. I've talked about this many times on the podcast, right? We have lots of distractions when we're in a vehicle. And if you want to watch my episode on distracted driving, you can click up here on that link and watch that and all the dangers that come with distracted driving and what's being done to try to counter that. But again, we just have to be very mindful, either when we're driving or when we're out on foot, navigating these streets. It's a very dangerous situation. As a matter of fact, I just saw in the news on Tuesday night, someone was killed in Olathe as a pedestrian. And it literally happens about every week that there's a pedestrian that's injured or killed around the Kansas City area. And again, that's just this one specific location. But again, this is happening all over Missouri. So as always, I hope you found this episode useful and informative. And please be safe and stay well.